Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And so I'd like to bring up again Steffen Pietsch. He was here yesterday to talk about what that thing's called again?
Clean.
Something?
Clean.
Mr. Clean?
Good to see you again. Hope you're good.
There we go.
What was the one thing to remember? The onion. Correct. Unfortunately, bad news. Today I don't have an onion. Sorry for that. Yeah, bad, I know. Okay. But I have a question. Who did already buy a house or a flat or an apartment? Show me your hands. This is amazing because now I'm talking to the experts that know what a liability is. And we will come to that, believe me. And I really appreciated the keynotes we had yesterday and also today, because there were some really very important points in it, some food for thought, and I will touch upon one of the topics. Just to mention Andrew today, in this session, we are really looking at a huge problem. And I will come to that as well. The world we are in is changing faster than ever. We heard it yesterday in the keynote, and I do not recall all the aspects like business or economic or technological disruption, sustainability, a lot of changes. And we cannot change the framing conditions, but we have to deal with it. And just to give you one example, what do you think? How long did it take for Netflix to gain 1 million users? Five years, 1 year, 3.5 years. How long did it take for ChatGPT to come to 1 million users? 1 month? 5 days. Meta threads? 1 hour. This is the world we are in. And this leads to a paradigm shift. And Klaus Schwab, the founder and CEO of the World Economic Forum, phrased it correctly. In the new world, it is not the big fish which eats the small fish. It is the fast fish which eats the slow fish. Think about that. And if this holds true, it leads to another question. How do we become or stay the fast ones? And there are two aspects I would like to touch upon as we are here looking at it from an IT perspective and in particular from the SAP perspective. So two aspects. One is upgrade readiness. Why? Because we at SAP, we invest significantly, billions of dollars, into the development and further evolution of our software to deliver process improvements, better user experience, new technology advancements like artificial intelligence and other topics. But there's one prerequisite. You need to be on the latest release to consume these innovations. If I deliver something now in the private cloud, and it takes you 5 years from now to consume it, then you're 5 years behind. This is a problem. The other area is agility, business agility. SAP stands for, remember yesterday's presentation, best-in-class industry-specific end-to-end business processes. Now, why are you here? Because your companies are successful. Your companies found a niche, developed a USP that makes your products, your services attractive for your customers. So your customers are buying or consuming your products. And why? Because you differentiate. And this oftentimes leads to differentiating processes. So even though you want to standardize, you want to be on the always latest release, you need still to differentiate. You need to optimize your internal processes, which oftentimes leads to automation. And I could continue like that. Now, standardization is key. And I don't know if you recognized it in the presentation we just saw. I really liked one of the enterprise architecture principles was standardization over custom build. Now, standardization on the one hand side and differentiation. This sounds like a contradiction. How to resolve that? And good or bad, maybe you are not alone. We did an analysis across multiple ERP systems, and let's say it's not uncommon that we see 10,000 more custom code objects in an ERP system. And don't mix up custom code objects with custom lines of code. So one object might comprise hundreds or even thousands of lines of custom code. And we see a lot of business modifications. And I separated out here technical modifications. So if you implement an S node for a technical change, this is not included here. These are business modifications. And this slows you down. These are the troublemakers in your upgrade process. And this blocks you from being on the latest release, from being able to consume the innovation that we deliver for you and, to be fully transparent, that you anyway pay for, right? Now, there is a quote, and this has nothing to do with SAP or with ABAP in particular. It comes from Google Software Engineering. Code is a liability. It's not an asset. The rationale behind is the functionality, the capability that you develop, and that you then provide to your business. Which could be a differentiating process, which could be a feature, could be an application, you name it. This is the asset. The code that you need to develop, this is the liability. Why? Because you need to maintain it. Even if technology changes, organizations change, the developer leaves the company, etc., etc. And you maybe need to maintain it over years or even decades. This is the liability. Now, how to deal with that? And custom code, to be very clear, will not go away. Clean core is a strategy that helps you to outbalance the value that you create and the liability that comes with it. So the way how you build your custom code and when you actually need it. This is the essence of the custom code. Now let's double click on this. When I talk about custom code, let's look at the definition. Clean core means an up-to-date, documented, unmodified, consistent, efficient, and cloud-compliant core. This sounds like this will be a longer session. So, clean core is only applicable in the private cloud, in brackets and on-premise. Why? Public cloud is by definition clean because you cannot modify the public cloud, S/4HANA public cloud. You cannot build custom code inside S/4HANA public cloud that would block the upgrade. But you can in the private cloud. And this is what we oftentimes see. So the concept of clean core is applicable for the private cloud. The capabilities that I'm talking about now depend on the software stack. And there's a lot of documentation. I have it, you know, from yesterday's presentation in my backup. I will show you some relevant links later where you can look it up. So typically, it's recommended to have a 22 S/4HANA release for that. But I will come to that later. Now, what are the benefits of having a clean core? Why are we doing this? So first, access to innovation, what I just mentioned. I mean, if you want to track carbon footprint, for example, this is a feature built in the latest S/4HANA release. If you're an older release, bad luck. It is about upgrade simplicity, so the way that you can consume these innovations. And this is to lower the TCO, because if you're able to manage your custom code in an appropriate way and manage the entire system, you thereby lower the TCO. And it is to enhance the security. If you have a grown system, if you have no understanding of the dependencies of your custom code, for example, and other areas, then you might run into trouble. It is to improve the performance, and it is to simplify your data landscape. So these are the outcomes of a clean core. And now, let's look at a customer example. Hitachi Hightech. It's a global high-tech company based out of Japan, and they maintained an ECC system. And in that system, they were able to only upgrade the system every 5 years with a lengthy project. It took them more than a year to upgrade the systems. I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday. I was also responsible for an ERP landscape on the customer side for quite some time. And I know the pain if you have to maintain and if you're responsible for a highly modified system that is really a heavy lifting to bring this to the next release. What they did, they followed a two-tier approach. So for their headquarters and manufacturing sites in Japan, they chose RISE, so an S4 system in the private cloud, and then added for their global subsidiaries S/4HANA public cloud instances. And they built their extensions both on stack, I will come to that, in a clean core fashion, as well as on BTP. And with that, they dramatically reduced the time and effort it takes for an upgrade. And this leads to the desired agility and to the ability to consume the always latest innovations from SAP. And I added a link here, and Paul mentioned that you get the slides. This leads to a publicly available success story of Hitachi Hightech, and I recommend you having a read. There's also a video available. It's really a great story and worth looking into the details here. And I had the opportunity to speak to that customer personally. Really a great example of what you can achieve with a clean core. Now let's look into the concept behind. Clean core covers multiple dimensions. The first one, business processes. So reduce the complexity. If you have hundreds of process variations, because you always need an exception here and there, then this comes with a complexity that is hard to manage and again leads to slowing down the upgrade cycles. The second one, this will be the focus of today's presentation, is extensibility. The essence of clean core from the extensibility perspective is to decouple your custom code from SAP code. This is the core principle. There are ways how to do it, but take this as a key takeaway. Decouple your custom code, and I'm talking here to architects, so you know what I mean by decoupling. Decouple the custom code from the SAP code. Third, data. Control the data to the latest standards, and I will quickly go through the other ones. Implement a reliable integration architecture and take care of your operations. Now let's look into the topic of extensibility. First, bad news. Upgrade projects will not go away. And again, I'm talking about private cloud. In the public cloud, SAP takes care of bringing you to the always latest release. To the good or to the bad, you cannot avoid it. You will be on the always latest release. This is public cloud. In the private cloud, the upgrade is still a custom project. Yes, SAP takes some part of it, but the leading part is with the customer. And the goal of the clean core is to smoothen that upgrade process and to build the system in a way that it is upgrade safe. And while I'm talking here about extensibility, extensibility is one aspect, and I'm glad that the next speaker here will also talk about another dimension, test automation, which must come together and which is another key component. But I will focus here on the extensibility topic. Now, decoupling. First, avoid extensions wherever possible. If the instant reaction of your developers to a business requirement is, yes, I can build it, then you know where the problem is. Back to standard and evaluate if a business requirement is being handled by SAP standard. This is the first area you have to look at. And then only if needed, look into a way how to build something. Then I will explain what are the aspects. Second, if you build something, decouple it. I will explain the three-tier extensibility model in a second. This is the way how you can decouple it and establish a governance. We just heard it under the architecture principles. The objective is that an upgrade does not break your extension, and also the other way around, that your extension does not break the upgrade, right? And there are, to be fair, there are areas where you cannot avoid technical debt. You have a pressing business requirement that you cannot avoid, but make these decisions really in a governed way, establish processes, and ensure proper documentation that you do not end up with a messed up system. And finally, use the full spectrum. I'm here because I stand for BTP. I have BTP in my veins. But it is not the question that, regardless of the business requirement, always use BTP. There are ways when you can build something on stack in an upgrade-safe way. Now we'll come to that. Now, the three-tier extensibility model. Show me your hands who knows that model. Great. Okay. Now, very quickly, and I will point you to a document, 60 pages read, where you can go into the details. So first, let's start with S/4HANA Public Cloud. There is a Tier 1. A Tier 1 means this is the recommended way how to extend an S/4HANA Public Cloud system. And this is A, use key user extensibility. And you can do a lot with key user extensibility. For example, if you want to add a field, etc., you don't need to do some magic. This can be done with key user extensibility. And there is developer extensibility. So you can build ABAP Cloud, which is a certain set or subset of classic ABAP. There are some rules that are then cloud compliant. So just to make one example, you cannot do an update on an internal table. This will not work. You cannot do this in the public cloud. Use developer extensibility ABAP Cloud to build something on stack, and what you build with ABAP Cloud is upgrade safe. Again, in the public cloud, you cannot do something else. And you can leverage BTP, a side-by-side extensibility way, where you have then the full spectrum from low-code, no-code, through SAP Build Code, I presented yesterday, through the BTP ABAP environment, so you can build ABAP side-by-side. This is public cloud. Now, let's broaden the view to the private cloud. In the private cloud, you have the same options, which is good. But in the private cloud, you can do even more. There are two more layers, Tier 2 and Tier 3. And let's start with Tier 3. Tier 3 is classic ABAP. So if you are a brownfield customer, you come from an ECC system, move over to S/4HANA private cloud, and you have all your custom code in your system. And this is typically Tier 3 classic ABAP coding. You can then, if you want to deal with that, you can then look at this Tier 3 code and think, okay, do I really need everything in that system? And statistics show us that there is a lot of code that was developed back then, but is not used anymore. So look at usage analysis, etc. What code do you really need? Retirement is the easiest way to get rid of custom code. And then you can renovate or innovate. You can refactor on stack. So bring classic ABAP code, refactor it to make it ABAP Cloud compliant. Bring it to Tier 1. Or you can refactor it and build it side by side on the BTP. Or there are some cases, let's just assume you have a significant investment, a large application developed in your system, and it works pretty well. And you have only a minor change to that application. Then you might just want to adapt that because there is no business case behind to do the entire heavy lifting, to refactor everything, etc. You do it where the business case is behind. Now, what about Tier 2? In Tier 1, in ABAP Cloud, you can only use released ABAP objects, so released APIs. For example, if you do on-stack development, there are internal APIs, CDS views, etc., how to access objects in the ABAP stack. But what do you do if you don't have such an API? In the public cloud, you're stuck. Because, again, you cannot do something out of the box there. You have to stick to the Tier 1 rules. In the private cloud, you have options. And the option is to build a custom wrapper around a classic ABAP objects, and this wrapper can then be consumed in the Tier 1. What you do by this is you don't clean up, but you govern, you know where you have to look at, what you have to test explicitly in the next upgrade. This is the essence. And this is what you do in Tier 2 as kind of an enabling layer where no API is available. And just last night, we released another recommendation how to use classic APIs in this Tier 2 layer. You found it on my LinkedIn profile. I posted something, or you just Google in the SAP community for that. And again, I have a detailed explanation for that in the backup. Now, if we look at the side-by-side opportunities, quick recap, BTP comes with 5 capabilities. Application development, key for extensibility, but also the other capabilities like automation, integration, data and analytics, and AI are key capabilities to build applications side by side on the BTP. And if we look in particular at the extensibility options on BTP, you have the low-code side with SAP Build Apps, with process automation, and with Workzone. And you have the pro-code side with SAP Build Code, remember yesterday's presentation, and with the ABAP environment. And with this spectrum, you can do really fancy stuff on the BTP. Now, not one size fits all. And I'm very often in discussions now, does clean core mean I must not develop anything, etc.? And I hope you got my point from the presentation so far. But one question remains. If I have a business requirement, when do I go on stack and when do I go side by side? And this is what we look at now. For on stack, when do you go on stack? If you have an extension that is part of a highly integrated business process, then this is an indication to go on stack. And whenever I say on stack, I mean ABAP cloud compliant, not classic. If you have an extension to an existing S/4HANA cloud application, you want to extend a field, you want to shove around the user interface, etc., there are key user tools available that help you to do so in a cloud compliant and upgrade stable way. If you have lots of data that you want to transfer, you have a SQL statement, and it does not make sense to transfer all the results to the BTP first, then do some minor operations, and then transfer all the results back. So this is another indication to stay on stack. And if you need transactional consistency, so for example, you make a change to a master data, and if that change for whatever reason breaks, then you don't want to have an inconsistent state on the database. All these topics are indications when you could go on stack. Now, when you go side by side, if you develop a new application that is, call it loosely coupled, you have an application, and yes, you need some backend access, you need to read data or you need to write data, totally fine, but the application itself is more or less loosely coupled. This is definitely an indicator to go side by side. If you have a hub scenario where you have multiple backends that you want to connect, typical indication to do this on the BTP and then connect the other systems. If you are a partner and want to build, I have 3 minutes left, if you are a partner and you want to build a SaaS application as a partner, you do it on BTP. If you want to build a mobile application, you use the mobile SDK, all the capabilities from BTP, and you can build an application that uses native device functionalities. Process automation. If you want to include users in your process that should not have access to your core, for example, you have an application where or a process where your customers or your business partners are involved. Do you want to have all of them jump on your S4 system? No. You can put this application on BTP and then connect it in a safe way to your backend. You have a scaling scenario. You want elasticity, but you do not want to put your core system at risk. You have frequent changes. I don't know how often you do transports to your S4 system. But on the BTP, you can do updates or deployments on a daily basis or even more often through the pipelines and thereby decouple the release cycles. And finally, ABAP developers are an as rare species as enterprise architects. And with the BTP, you can address a larger developer community, like Java, JavaScript, TypeScript, etc. All indications when to go side by side on the BTP. So the key takeaway is, first, code is a liability, not an asset. Second, be the fast one. And third, leverage the full value. It's not, again, a one-size-fits-all. Leverage the full value. And the clean core helps you to outbalance the liability and the value. Again, you will not survive without any line of custom code. If you want to differentiate, you need to find your niche, you need to build something. Now, you get the slides just to quickly browse through the guidance framework I explained yesterday. The ABAP Extensibility Guide for S4HANA. There, the 3-tier extensibility model is explained in detail. Definitely a must-read for all your ABAP developers in your company. And also as an architect, have a look at it. The application extensibility model is a structured approach how to drive decisions concerning extensibility, how to document them. And finally, the solution diagram repository. And I'm in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we got our flag photo yesterday, so he's not getting a flag 2 of them anyways.
Ah.
Okay, so just